Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the BoricuaBC2 show. I am your host, Bill Cancel. First of all, if you're not watching the Bad Brad Berkowitz show, you're missing out on something. But today, we have the second half of that awesome show. Everybody say hello to Miss Tammy. Hello, Tammy.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Very good, very good. Thank you for joining us. How's Brad
Thank you for
recovering?
having
He's
me.
doing good?
Oh, yes, he is. He's doing well.
Send him my
Gives
love.
me
Thank you
lots of
very
time to
much.
tease him about it too.
Okay. So I want to start off. I want to start off either dispelling or confirming a rumor that I heard.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So rumor has it that you really hate Trump. Is that true or not?
That is not a rumor. It's absolutely true. So it's
What?
gonna be a hard question.
Yeah. What's the most that you're concerned about with him? What gets your blood boiling? What's the situation? Tell us.
What gets me boiling more than anything is just his treatment of people. I think I've heard so many people have told me, well, I don't think he's racist. I think he cares about everyone. And I think just the opposite.
Yeah.
He says a lot of things that I think are not just controversial,
Right.
but just hateful. I
Yeah.
think that he's given a forum to people um, who were not openly racist or openly homophobic. Um, he's now given them a forum where they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So I think now we see so much mistreatment of other people. I can never, ever, and I've tried thinking back, and I'd like to answer this question also. Have you ever disliked someone or just did not want to be a part of anything around them because they voted for a different party? We never even used to ask people, are
No.
you a Republican or are you a Democrat? How did you vote? That was something that was personal and private, but it is so open and out there now that every time I see someone, my first thought is, are they MAGA?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's been so much hatred and just, awful things being said, treatment of people. And I truly believe that he hates black and brown people.
Yeah.
Anyone
Absolutely.
who's not white, I feel like he hates them.
Yeah.
The treatment of immigrants, it's all just so, to me, unconscionable. I can't imagine feeling that we're treating people that way. But that's what MAGA does. And I think that he's brought that about. He didn't,
What?
now, don't get me wrong, he didn't start racism. He didn't
No,
bring it.
no,
It's
no, no,
always
no.
been here.
I totally agree. I totally agree. But do you think he figured out early on, and there's no really nice way to say this, but do you think he figured out early on that racism was profitable? Racism could be used to win elections. Do you think he just
Um,
figured it out and then just started stirring the pot?
no, I think that he uses it to his
Right.
benefit, I believe, but I believe that's who he is.
Hmm.
Historical things like not necessarily him, but and maybe him at some point, but his father, not wanting to rent to people
Right.
of color.
Right. Right.
So it's nothing new for him. I think that he's just found out that he can do it so openly and people don't judge him on it. People are okay with it. There's so many who follow him and are okay with it that he knows he can do that.
But staying on that point, which is an excellent point, by the way, but staying on that point, do you think that there's an underlying reason for the racism? Is it really just because is it je simple as jealousy? Is it simple as you don't deserve this, I do?
Mhm.
Where do you think that the real core of the problem lies?
Okay, I've never thought it was jealousy. What I've always thought is people are taught that.
Yeah,
And I think that that comes from feeling like you're better than someone else, which is
yeah,
something I could never believe. I've taught my children, you're not better
right,
than anyone. We're all the
right,
same.
right,
Um, in order to get respect, you have to give respect. I think we all
right.
deserve that. But I think that there are people, and I think that definitely President Trump is one of those. You feel like you're above other people. So you can treat them as if they're less than.
Right.
And I think that once people are taught that, as you grow older, you have different experiences, you meet different people, you have an opportunity to change that. You don't have to
Yeah,
be that way. But so
yeah.
many people just embrace it, and that's just where they are.
Right. And you know what bothers me about that, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, Tammy, is that
Okay.
to me, yeah, the sides are split. You know, there's MAGA, there's the liberals, and so on and so
Right.
forth. There's different factions in MAGA, there's different factions in the Democrats,
Mhm.
but the split is solid. But at the end of the day, what I don't understand is that we as liberals are in fact fighting for the betterment of our enemies, which is MAGA. And you may look at me kind of weird and say, "How could you say that, Bill?" So that, well, think about it. We're fighting for the Constitution so they can keep the Constitution solid. We're fighting for due process so they can keep the due process solid. We're
Right.
fighting to keep our elections so they can keep the election solid, right? So, and there's other examples of that I'm sure we can come up with, but we're really trying to help them. And
Absolutely.
and the fact that they don't even realize that or care to realize it, or excuse the French, don't give a shit to realize it, is like really weird to me. You know, if you're dying in the street and you need water, I'm going to give you water. I'm not going to come over there with the bottle of ice and say, "Excuse me, are you MAGA?" I'm gonna give you the water, right? I mean, because that's what we would do. I don't know if that's the case with MAGA, and why
Well,
don't they see that?
I think that I've heard people saying, I completely agree that I believe that people have embraced their hatred so much that they're only thinking of what they want. And
Right,
they believe that whatever happens, whatever Donald Trump does, is only going to affect those they don't want to have those benefits. It won't hit them at
right,
all.
right,
I
yeah,
think some are finding that out.
right.
But to another point, you said that if they need water, you're going to give it to them. I don't know if I'm still there.
Okay.
Um, I've always been I'm very caring, empathetic. I love helping people, no matter who it
Hmm.
is. But that's what I was saying about I think so much has changed
Right.
um, with the way the world is now, with Donald Trump being in office and the way things are happening. Because one of the first things I did, I let go of a lot of friends when he was elected. And
Hmm.
I did that because there's so many things about him that I cannot agree with. I
Hmm.
do not, if I
Yeah.
agree with those things,
Me
I'm
too.
normalizing it and
Yeah.
I'm condoning it, right?
Absolutely. Right. Me too.
So people who previously said they loved me, these are friends of mine. These are
Right.
people, that I've known for
Yep.
years.
Yep.
But if you support an adjudicated rapist,
Yep.
you don't care about me.
Right.
I have sisters. I have a daughter.
That's right.
I have friends. I cannot support that. And if I do, then I'm normalizing it. So people who support that, we cannot be friends because you're
Right.
going completely against what you say you feel about me.
Right.
If you hate LGBTQ, I think this, I
Yeah.
get me, I
You're
say it
right.
wrong.
You're right. Spot on.
Okay,
You're
okay.
spot on. Yeah.
So if you don't support these people, then we're saying they're less than we are. They're people just like
You're
we are.
exactly right.
Think about
Exactly
it.
right.
You're judging someone based on their sexual preference.
Right.
No one asks you what your preference is.
That's right. That's right.
So how do we judge them on that?
Yeah.
You're judging people of color as if they're different. They may be a different race. They may have some different customs depending on where they're from, but we're all people.
Hmm.
And I have difficulty with that. I can't, if I condone that in any way, then I'm normalizing it, and I
Right.
can't do that.
An interesting
So,
point. That's a
in
very
that respect, I've let
interesting
a
point.
lot of people go,
Right.
people I really cared about and I thought cared about me. But you can't. You can't care about me. You can't care about the other brown people because you can't say, well, hey, I like you,
Yeah.
but that brown person I don't.
Yeah. Exactly. Because it's one of
How
those
how
things.
can you make a distinction in that? You
Right.
can't.
Right.
So I think that, and that's why I think that so much has changed in the way that we see people. Because, like I said, now first thing I think when I see someone is, hey, I wonder if they're MAGA. And usually not immediately. But when you meet someone, you say, or you come upon someone, say when
Hmm.
shopping, and you say hello, and they look at you
Yeah.
with disdain. You don't even know me. It
Right.
doesn't hurt to say hello.
Right.
People are people. And I've taught my children, I was taught when I was, a child, you love everyone. But I think I have so much anger because it doesn't seem to be that way now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people have changed. Maybe they're
Yeah.
just more comfortable showing who they are.
Exactly. Let me jump into the political forum a little bit now.
Okay.
What are you most concerned about our country? If you could give me your top, I don't know, your top three things that you're really concerned about this country.
Okay. First, people, because
Right.
I realize that Although I knew America was never great, I never thought that, but
Right.
I thought we were a better country. I thought we were a better class of people, and apparently we are not. The second thing is the economy.
Yeah.
But something that really, really bothers me are the deportations.
Yeah.
And that's because people are being treated so inhumanely. I believe that everyone has a right to have, whether great or not, equal treatment,
Right.
and
Exactly.
good life.
Right.
And people are here in this country for different reasons.
Right.
Not always because they've been persecuted or, maybe they're just looking for a better life. Well, why
Yeah.
shouldn't they have that? We're going to deny someone that. And if you could put yourself in someone else's place, if you could feel what you make them feel, I think we'd all cry. I think we'd all cry in pain.
Hmm.
It's We have to realize that what's going on now is absolutely wrong. I've never seen it before. And for so many people to not be outraged about it is scary.
Yeah.
It really is
I
because
totally agree.
we see these ICE agents, they're wearing masks and they're
Right.
abusing people, beating them down. Is that really necessary? It's like there's just so
No.
much hatred there, you
No.
know? And if you can do that, who are you?
Yeah.
Is
And
that
it's funny.
someone you want? Is that
Yeah.
someone
Right.
you want around you?
Right before I jumped onto the show, I just saw a skeet outlining the number of deportations that Obama had. It was something like 3 or 4 million deportations during his term. None of this shit happened.
Right. Never.
None of
It's
this
never
happened.
happened.
We
It didn't.
weren't building alligator Alcatraz. We weren't trying to reopen
Right.
Alcatraz. We weren't beating people in the streets, but we got the deportations done because we followed the rule of law. You know, um, to answer my own question, and I'd love to hear your comments on this as well too. What scares me the most is, I have always been, I'm 60 now. I've always been a very mild-mannered, love everybody kind of dude. That's just how
Mhm.
I am. I think I was a hippie in a past life. Um, but when I was 25, I could count on 2 fingers the number of people I hated on the planet, right? Two
Right.
fingers, 2 fingers, At 60, I don't have enough appendages to count because the country has developed such a passion for hate now that it really makes me very nervous. And it's not just the MAGA side, because the MAGA has been hating for years. Our
Hmm.
side is getting hateful because of the constant beatdown that we've been getting.
Right.
And at some point in time, that's going to come to a head. Now, you could sit there and say, well, the liberals are the more mature, the more intellectual, the so on and so forth, that will always take the high road out. I tend to agree with that. But they always say that the right has radicals on the right hand side. We don't have radicals on the left. That's bullshit.
Oh,
We
yeah.
do have we do have radicals on the left, okay? And at some point in time, those tensions are going to hit, and that's something that really makes me very nervous.
I agree.
Um, so I don't know. It's a definitely trying time. So I don't know if you already answered this or not, but we'll take another shot at this question. But what's
Okay.
keeping you up at night now? Is it just the deportations? Is it just everything else or
I think mostly it is deportations
hmm
because what's happening to these people, what happens when this administration is done with them? They're moving to someone else.
Yeah.
If you can treat anyone that way,
Yeah, yeah.
then you can literally treat everybody that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's a scary thought. We're in a
Yeah.
different world now. People getting snatched from work, just on the street, anything. One of the most recent stories I read was about a 67-year-old woman who's been here, for years. She came here in the 70s. She's married, has a daughter. She came on a visa. Yeah, she's been allowed to stay all these years.
Hmm.
And just one day they come to her house and pick her up.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I mean, how does that ever happen? So people can't be comfortable. They can't feel safe.
Right.
And if they can't feel safe, can any of us feel safe?
Right. And it goes back to my point that I just made about the hatred, that you've got a
Hmm.
situation right now where you've got bounty hunters who are putting $1,000 or $1,500 price tag on destroying a family because they hate.
Exactly.
So I mean, so you're putting money and not lots of money. You're putting $1,000, $1,500 to destroy a
Right.
family solely because of the fact that you hate and you want $1,500. That's like
Exactly.
abhorrent behavior. And the other thing is that me being Puerto Rican, I'm like four generations Puerto Rican. I
Mhm.
get very nervous because, we know he hates Puerto Rico already. We already know
Right.
that, right? So
Right.
when he gets done with the South Americans and stuff like that, could he come from Puerto Rico? He could.
Sure, you could.
He
It doesn't
very
matter if they're
easily
a part of
could.
the United States. It doesn't
Yeah.
even, it's like
It, it,
nothing seems to matter and there are no
Nothing seems to matter.
consequences.
Nothing seems to matter. Now, we're going to spin things around. I think the next few questions are just kind of randomish, so we're going to kind of bounce around a little bit. Just put up with me
Okay.
a little bit. Um, Given everything that's happening, especially now with the big bad bill, and
Mm.
I hate saying that because it reminds me of Brad. I don't want to use his name. Um,
What a name, right? Big
yeah,
Bad
exactly. The
Bill.
big bad bill. Personally, I think it's going to pass. I think it's going to pass.
I agree.
And I think it's going to be horrific.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's going to be a lot of bloodshed on it, but I think it's going to pass. Do you think, with what we've seen so far in the past 6 months of his term, and now sprinkle in the big bad bill passing, right? Do you think MAGA is starting to split, already splitting, or will remain solid?
I think they'll remain solid.
Yeah, okay.
And I say that because it doesn't matter what happens. It's like they're on board and they're so tight knit. It's like you can't pull them together. And I still wonder why. What is it?
Hmm.
At the end of the day, is it only hatred?
Yeah.
I'm sure some people are being, and not people like myself or, possibly you, but billionaires are making money. They're not going to change.
Yeah,
As long
of
as they're
course.
making money, they're okay. They're not
Right.
going anywhere. But even the few who've spoken out against, some things but say, like even Charlie Kirk,
Right.
first thing he said was President didn't have a choice in bombing Iran. Well, there was a choice.
Oh, there was a choice. There was an
There
absolute
was
choice in
absolutely a
Burma.
choice.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
so I find that they're always excusing what's happening and what President Trump is doing. I don't think they're splitting. Let's say the Big Beautiful Bill. What an awful name, right? But every single one will say it. They stick together like seriously like glue.
Yeah.
They just don't I don't know what it'd take to pull them apart. I really don't.
Do you think when hospitals start to close and when grandma gets off of Medicaid now has to move back in with them, or or they themselves who may be disabled and now lose their disability, or the veteran MAGAs who are losing their disability and stuff like that, how does that dynamic play into it then?
I've thought about that as well. And I was floored when I saw a video of a woman saying, President Trump, we'll just have to deal with this for a while. We still support you. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you
Yeah,
kidding? At what point do you
right,
look at self-preservation?
right.
Because at some point it has to hit you, just like
Do
it
you
hits everyone else.
Right, but do you think, yeah, I've often skeeted about this. Nobody likes to admit they're wrong. Nobody ever does,
Okay.
and to me, if you're a person of true character, you do admit when you're wrong and you admit it openly and publicly and so
Right.
on and so forth, right? Because that's part of the healing process, that's part of the
Hmm.
learning process and so on and so forth. Is it really just a case that they just don't want to admit that they're wrong? Or are they just truly brainwashed into thinking whatever he says, I'm good?
I don't know if that's completely it. I think some may be brainwashed if we can,
Right.
but I even use that term loosely. I still feel like they have so much hatred for someone else.
Okay,
But
that's a
the
good point.
other thing is, he's you ask if I hate him, he's like a petulant child, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So if you speak out against him, something that floored me when he called Anderson Cooper, Allison Cooper. I hated
right.
that. But he is so open about ridiculing people, name calling, everything, going to social media. I think people are afraid of that to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he necessarily has to have information on them, or they're
Right,
just worried about him tearing them down in the
right.
public. Um, I think there are a number of things they could be worried about, but I think mostly it's about him because regardless of what he says or does, what we think about his cognitive decline, anything you can say about President Trump, the fact is he's in a powerful position
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and you don't know where it's going.
Right.
You don't know what he may do.
Do you have any concerns? Because this is a topic that really makes another thing that makes me very nervous. I'd love to
Mhm.
get your input on this. When we, when I'm out on blue sky, um, I see a lot of people skeeting now. It's not going to change. We're in full-blown fascism. There'll be no elections. I hate that comment that there'll
Yeah,
be no elections. You know, and because to me it promotes defeatism,
correct.
right? And I understand the purpose of social media to the extent that people need to vent, and I welcome that. And I think that that's
Mhm.
a great aspect of social media that's brought to us. We finally have a forum where we could all come out there and say, "This sucks," I don't want to deal with this
Right.
crap anymore. But not only can you say that, thousands of people can hear you say it and support you,
That's the
which is
problem.
fantastic.
Yes,
The problem with that to me is, you know, when you start saying things like it's over, we wasted our time, and there's not going to be any elections, you're getting that into the brain of the weak people who don't get it.
absolutely.
And if you get that number really, really big, that's a big problem.
I
So
agree.
are you sensing that we are starting to see this defeatism in little pockets?
In little pockets, yes, because I've
Yeah.
seen the same thing. And I think the problem with that is, first of all, I agree with what you said. Social media is this forum where people can vent, they can put
Right.
things out there.
Right.
But the biggest problem I see with it is people put out so much false information.
Oh my God.
When you put that out there, someone is not going to research it. They're going to take
No.
it and run with it. I see a
Right.
lot of that. So they're feeding, you're feeding into something.
Yeah.
And like you said, weak-minded or, whatever the reason, people grasp onto that and they hold on to it.
Yeah.
People love repeating what they've heard rather than trying to,
Researching.
research it and see if it's really
Right.
true.
Right. Right.
So I think that that's a big problem. And it
Yeah.
causes, I think, even more people to back up and not do what they should do. I think we
Right.
always have to stand strong. We all have to stand for what we believe in.
Right.
And I think people will back up because of that. For that very reason, they will. We have enough people now who will say, oh, I don't vote. My one vote doesn't make a difference.
Right.
I always thought that was crazy. Your one vote. How many people are saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my point, Tammy. That's my exact point.
Yeah. But when you
Yeah.
have someone making you feel like we've already been defeated,
Yeah.
they're definitely not going to get out and vote. We have to put out good information or just don't put any out at all.
Watch if you get a chance to watch my show on Substack or YouTube. I did a
Mhm.
whole show called Doom Scrolling, Doom Feeding. Okay. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, you and I. Doom scrolling is the act of just coming out and just give me all the bad news as humanly
Right.
possible, whether it's true or false or not. I don't give a shit. Just give me all the doom, right?
Right.
Because there are people out there that just ingest that, right? Because they don't want to think about changing and how to change and which way I should go and so on and so
Exactly.
forth. I just need the bad news. But doom feeding is a bigger problem.
It is.
Because if all you're doing is just saying the world is ending, here's another breaking story. Like I love Aaron Parnas. I've said this on a half a dozen shows already.
Mhm.
If I met him and had the honor to meet him, I'd give him a sloppy kiss and a big hug and stuff like that. He's great, but he's one of these champions of doom feeding, right?
I was going to say
And
that. Yes.
and it's a tough. He's got a really tough balance, right? Because he needs to be on top of the news because that's who he is.
Right.
He needs to present the news as it is, good, bad, or otherwise, because that's who he is, right?
Hmm.
But that's his choice, right, to do that.
Right.
But he's got 1 million followers.
Right.
You know,
And
I
they're
I
not all, they
I
don't
could
have the
be
same mindset.
right. I could be Aaron tomorrow. I could be Aaron Jr. tomorrow, and just sit on my technology here in my house, and
Mhm.
just every second a news story comes out, do a podcast, do a podcast, do a podcast, do a podcast. First of all, people are going to stop watching it because it's just overkill, right? And I'm
Mhm.
feeding that pipe. So I'm so happy that you said what you said because people really need to take responsibility of their content.
They do.
That you cannot just blast shit out there without really providing context, providing resources, providing facts, and so on and so. And let me tell you, I'm the first one, and I've done it. You can see them in my skeets and stuff like that. When I get called out by somebody,
Hmm.
I'm the first one to retweets and says, "My bad, this was wrong, been clarified,"
Okay.
and I give credit to the person who proved me off, right? Uh, so we have to get to that point, but that's
I
something
think
that
that's
really,
great.
really,
You're one of the
yeah,
few.
yeah, that's it's something. It's a beautiful point you brought up. Thank you. Here's a trick question for you.
Okay.
Um, and we've had some back and forthing on this, and I've gotten mixed reaction on previous shows about this question. Is the end of Donald Trump near?
I don't think so.
Okay. From a health perspective or from a presidential perspective or both?
I'm told he's not healthy, but you wouldn't know it.
Right,
He's
right.
steady going. Um, but from a political perspective, I have to I try to be realistic about it
Mm-hmm.
because he's done so much that I felt like he would be called on, and had to answer for, but he has not.
Mm-hmm.
We have the courts making these rulings, and people get excited and say, hey, the court ruled against Donald Trump. The court said this. But what is the court doing when he ignores your ruling? They're
Mm-hmm.
doing nothing. I even, I know, I realize they don't have a police force to say, hey, go arrest him, go do this, or go do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's a limit to what they're going to do to the president to start with. But they do have two things they can do. They can fine him excessively, and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
They can also hold him in contempt. It has not been done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to realize that in factoring whether it's the end of him or not, we've got to consider that. We got to consider these courts. They may seem to rule our way, but they're not doing anything about it. They're not
Mm-hmm.
enforcing anything. So where do we go from there? And
Yeah,
I
that's
ask
a
you
good
this
point.
question: where do you think we go? Do you think it's the end of him, or where do you think we go from here?
Right. Part of me thinks the end is near.
Okay.
And maybe that's just because you call me naive,
Hmm.
call me overly optimistic. A lot of people that I've spoken to say he'll not make it presidentially or health wise to the midterms.
Okay.
I can't speak to the health side of it. And one of the reasons why I say that is, and this is another trick, another question coming off of the original question. Project 2025 is what drove everything, right, in this election cycle, so on and so forth. And he said he didn't know about it and all the crap and so on and so forth.
Right.
But he's been delivering 2025. And
Hmm.
there are schools that believe Trump won the election for because it was stolen. But the bottom line is that Trump won the election because they needed a delivery boy for Project 2025, right?
Yes.
And it couldn't be JD because MAGA hates JD, right?
Absolutely.
So the question then becomes if 2025 is delivered, right?
Hmm.
And which it looks like it will be very shortly, and the rest of the country is in hell in a handbasket, which looks like it will be. Okay. Okay.
It looks that way.
Okay. He's outlived his usefulness to the Project 2025 people.
Okay. I agree.
So that's where I'm saying that could be an interesting play because right now you have two factions on the Republican side. You've got the JD faction with Peter Thiel and all the rich boys, the techno bros. You've got the Trump faction, which is just all the loyalists, right?
Hmm.
Fast forward, if we have midterms and they lose as predicted, it's going to happen. That rift is going to become massive because the JDs are going to be like, look what you did to us, scumbag. This is all your fault. You did this, you disabled bastard, you so on and so forth. And Trump's going to be, you disloyal son of a bitch. How dare you talk to me like that? Yada, yada. You've done nothing as vice president. Yada, yada. And you know who's going to win that battle, right?
I do.
It's not going to be Trump.
JD's will win that battle.
JD's going to win that battle. So
Yeah,
that's where
they
the whole
will.
notion of, are we at his last days came from.
I think that I hadn't thought about it the way you said it, but you're right. Maybe it is. But I was thinking that as long as because he's doing what they allow.
Right. Exactly.
Um, he's doing
Exactly.
exactly what they allow. And I
Exactly.
think as long as he's
Exactly.
doing what they allow, I figured he'll be there.
Right.
Because even if, okay, I thought that if Trump is gone and JD's in his place, what happens? People hate him.
Yeah.
I don't care who's behind him. You can't make people like him.
Mm-mm.
So then that will lead to something else.
Mm-hmm.
It'll lead to another group, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
A
not sure
faction
about
of MAGA. Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Good point. All right. This is a tough question. My last two questions, and they're probably both the toughest questions.
Okay.
Um, where are the Democrats, Tammy?
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing. Isn't it amazing how such a difficult question could be asked in like 5 words, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm dying to hear your answer on this one.
I thought you would be. I was worried about that one. Well, let me be honest with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we're on life support.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
I believe we're on life support.
Yeah.
And I say that because no matter what happens, Trump supporters, MAGA, whatever you call them, they're all so
Yeah.
tightly wound. They hold
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
fight together.
Yeah.
But we have Democrats who, you can say you're a Democrat, but you're supporting what President Trump does.
Exactly.
How do you vote
Right.
for anyone he's nominated? I could have spit fire. I mean, just absolutely. When Cory Booker voted to confirm Charles Kushner, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I could not believe it. And then he gave that lame excuse. He helped get something through. Okay, so he did. But he's a convicted felon, just like our president.
Yeah, exactly.
This is who he wants. And he's pardoned so many people, just simply showing them there are no consequences for what you do.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't happen for you or I.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
You know, and the Democratic Party is not holding together. We have 83-year-old, I think Bernie Sanders is. We have Bernie Sanders and AOC touring the country,
Mm-hmm.
trying to rally Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Where is everyone else?
Yeah.
Why
Don't
is
get me
no one
started.
else speaking out? I don't
Let me
understand that.
let me paint the picture for you and comment. Keep that thought, but let me paint the
Okay.
picture for you further and then re-comment on it based on that.
Okay.
Remember, we just talked about the two factions in the Republican Party, the JD Vance and the Trump faction, right?
Yes.
We've got the same exact thing in the Democratic Party. You've got the progressives on the left and you got the old school on the right.
Yes.
Instead of doing this, they're doing this,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Pulling
You know
apart.
who does that? You know who does that? You know
Who's
who
that?
did that? The Republican Party and MAGA did that. So hang on, it gets even better. Hang on,
Okay.
okay. So so you've got that split that's actually taking place now.
Okay.
Put them up here on top, and then below us, put all the Republicans and Democrats in the states. Now, another show you should be watching of mine is called The Winning Show that happens every Saturday, where I intentionally research and find 10 Democratic wins that have happened throughout the country. And
Okay.
sometimes it's special elections, sometimes, that kind of stuff that I have to show that we are still winning, right? From,
Okay.
from a Democratic perspective, right?
I look for that as well.
So now you've got two fractions and now a third fraction.
Okay.
So you got the Dems down here at the state level, and you got two sets of Dems up here at the right at the top level. This one's not talking to this one. This one's not talking to this one. This one's not talking to this one. What the hell is going on?
That's my
This is
point. So
this is
that's
what
why
I
we're
don't
on life
understand.
support.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand, and
Hmm.
it pains me because you know you can't start figuring this out in August of 2026 because you're going to lose, Tammy. You're going to
Absolutely.
lose. Don't just
Absolutely.
cancel the election. Just cancel it because there's no way in hell you're going to win it. You have
Yeah.
to be doing this today. We don't have a Democratic leader yet. I don't know why. I don't know
I don't
why
know.
we have two factions of Democrats, progressive, and everybody else. I don't know why. And what's really pissing me off is that you look at all the people on Blue Sky who are implying that they know what to do and they're not being listened to.
Right.
You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? I mean, I
Absolutely.
may want to vote for the people on Blue Sky instead of vote for my elected officials at this point in time because they get it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to vent, but
Nope, you're absolutely right. Keep going.
yeah, no, I'm done. Go ahead.
Because listen, that's
Yeah,
exactly why we're on life support, because we
right,
cannot come together. And how can we not? With everything the Republicans do, you
right,
think we take a page from their book?
right,
We have to be united, and we're not.
right.
We're absolutely not united. We don't try to fight for each other. We don't fight for what's going on. We don't have the same agenda. Everyone has something different, and that's
But
not okay.
I will push back on that just a little bit because I think
Okay.
the um the Democrats in the states
Hmm.
and the Democrats and the progressives, they get it. Problem is, old school is still in charge.
Okay.
So until this faction of old school wakes up, we have a problem.
But do you think they will, though? That's the thing.
I, Let me tell you, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I've mentioned this also in a couple of my shows. Uh, the potential does exist. I don't
Okay.
know how plausible it is, but the potential does exist that the Nancy Pelosi's and the Hakeem Jeffries and the Chuck Schumers know that there's something happening that they can't talk about. Know that there's something, that's going to change the tide, so and so they can't reveal for whatever reason. Bang.
Hmm.
It's plausible. I don't know if it's likely, but it's plausible. The position that I have is it's also been documented that the Republican old guard is taking a position of let's just let Rome burn. And then after it burns, we'll show up with the shovels and the water guns and put everything out, and we'll be the heroes again. Rome burned. what, why would you want to clean up a burned town at that point, right?
Right.
It
Right.
makes like no sense, right? And the other thing you have to keep in mind is that every month that he does this damage, Trump adds 6 months to recover from it.
I
Is
thought
it,
longer than 6 months.
it could be a year, it could be 2 years to recover from
Hmm.
it, but so the waiting thing is just not working for me anymore, and it's not working for
Yeah,
like my 47,000 followers. It's like no, 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 no. Now, please,
I agree.
Yeah.
I
So
think now's the time.
yeah,
But that's the problem. We're not doing anything.
right.
Um, and I believe that, like you said, Rome burns. Once it's burned, I think it'll take, I don't know how long to get it back. I think so much has been done now that it's going to be hard to fix it.
Yeah,
How do you alienate all of your allies? How do we get that back?
yeah,
How do we ever get that back?
right.
It's going to take time. Even if Trump is gone, even if the Republicans are not in power, how do we get that back?
Yeah,
And then we have to have someone who's strong enough to do it. We
yeah,
have to have someone who is strong enough, knowledgeable enough, and
right,
ready to take that on.
right. I
I
totally
don't see
agree.
anyone like that yet. What's
Okay,
coming?
your last question. This is the fun
Okay.
question. I promise this is the fun question. You may hate me for this question, but it's a fun question. Brad
I
didn't
do
like
that.
Brad didn't like it when I asked him this question.
Uh-oh.
We had a good laugh. We had a good laugh actually.
I watched this show. Let's see. What was that question?
Last question.
Okay.
Predictions.
Okay.
What do you predict?
Oh my gosh.
That's what Brad said. He put his head down and said, "Oh my God."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've got a headache now. I don't like that question. Let's see.
Or do you
Well,
predict
but
anything?
I really don't. And I say that because I try not to. And sometimes I say, Brad, well, what do you think? What's going to happen? He goes, I don't know. I
Mhm.
think there'll be one of two things, and we'll talk about it like that. But I think I'm afraid to predict anything. Like I said before, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right. We don't know what's going to happen in
Um,
5 minutes. Right. Yeah.
right. Because things to me seem so out of whack. They're all
Yeah.
things I never thought could happen. You know, I thought, naively so, that Trump wouldn't win that election. And he
Hmm.
did.
Yeah. Me too.
Then, the more he does things, the more he says things, I see his administration mimicking him, He talks down to reporters. Now they talk down to reporters. They talk down to, when they have these Senate hearings, I could pull my hair out because they're so disrespectful. They don't answer
Hmm.
the questions. It's almost like I'm doing you a favor by being here.
Right.
I never thought
Exactly.
of a
Who
Senate,
are you? Who are you to talk to me? Yeah.
right. I never thought of it like that. I love
Right.
watching those, and
Right.
it's got now I'm thinking, well, I know what's going to happen, so why even watch it? I better see what they're going to say. Um, So it's hard to predict anything.
Yeah.
You know, something Brad and I've talked about, and you may have noticed as well, they're dressing like President Trump.
Yeah, I hate that. Oh my God. It's such a cult. It is such a
Yes,
cult.
it
Yeah.
is. It is.
Yeah.
So I have no idea how to predict anything that's going to happen. What I
Yeah.
do want to happen for the Democrats to get it together, I need them to come off life support. I need some of these people need to be primaried, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really think that one thing that is happening that I think has not happened to this degree before is our representatives don't have us in mind.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make choices and vote with us in mind.
Right.
Um, so I don't know how to predict that. I don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting back and waiting,
Interesting.
praying
Tammy,
about it and
thank you.
trying to do my part,
Yeah.
calling representatives. And it almost seems useless these days. They used to talk to you. I've called before, and I've talked
Right.
to representatives. They've been really nice about it. And they send you a letter thanking you and they enjoy the conversation. Now,
They don't
and I'm
pick
in a
up.
red state. I'm in a red state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all my representatives are Republican. And I've called them a million times. They eventually send a letter back and thank me, for contacting them. But they're not going to do anything I want.
Mm-mm.
So then I decided I'm going to call all the Democrats from my state. They don't even call back. They don't call back. I've never gotten a letter, no responses whatsoever. That's why I say the Democrats are on life support.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't reach out to your constituents, if you can't reach out and let them know that you're still here and fighting for them, we have a
This
problem.
is this is this is the mystery of the gods, my dear Tammy. Thank you
Yeah,
so very much. You were absolutely incredible.
you're
To
welcome.
all the viewers out there, I hope you enjoyed today's show. It'll be posted tomorrow. Everybody have a great afternoon. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.